Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. I hope all of you are doing great today. Today's video is all about the IELTS test, and what I'm going to do today is to share with you my IELTS scores, the recent scores that I got for the computer-based IELTS test, specifically for the general test, not the academic one, that I took here in Toronto, held by the British Council around I think 3 weeks ago or so. I will also compare my scores, which I got from the computer-based test, with the scores that I got around 2 years ago when I took the paper-based test, because some of you are perhaps thinking about whether to take the paper-based test or the computer-based test, and I hope that this could give you some insight and help you to make your decision. By the way, in case you're new to this channel and you don't want to miss out on any videos about living in Canada, working, studying, and even moving to Canada, then make sure that you subscribe to my channel, and also don't forget to hit the little alarm bell so that you will get notified by YouTube when there are new videos from me. So let's get back to the topic. Let me share my IELTS scores with you. So I've written them down on this piece of paper here, and voila, surprise, surprise, you can see that the scores that I got from the paper-based test and the computer-based test are exactly the same. And keep in mind that these tests are about 2 years apart. So I took the computer-based test a few weeks ago, and I took the paper-based test about 2 years ago. So you might be asking me, why did I take the IELTS test twice? In fact, I actually took the IELTS test 3 times so far in my life until now. Before I continue going into the scores, I just want to give you some context. So before I moved to Canada, I first took the academic IELTS test in Jakarta, Indonesia. Then I moved to Canada, and because I wanted to apply for PR, for the Express Entry Program, for which the IELTS test, IELTS scores are needed, I took the IELTS test again, but that time I took the general IELTS test, and that was the paper-based IELTS test. And unfortunately, my PR application had not been successful yet, but my IELTS scores already expired, and that is why early this year I had to take the IELTS, the general IELTS test again. And this time around, I opted for the computer-based test. And there are many reasons why I still prefer the computer-based test. And I've made a video earlier talking about why I prefer the computer-based test over the paper-based test. And if you're curious to know more in more detail about that, you can check out my other video, which I will link up here. So let's go back to the scores again. So did this score, the same score, surprise me? Actually a little bit, to be honest, for 2 reasons. Because when I took the computer-based test recently, I've already lived in Canada for 2 years. So I thought that my English skills would have improved, both in listening, writing, and everything. But it seems that it has stayed around the same. Or perhaps maybe that wasn't the reason. It was just that my skills at taking the IELTS test have remained the same. And also, secondly, what surprised me a bit was because I had a very good feeling about the computer-based test. I was quite confident when I was taking the test that by taking the computer-based test, I would be able to get a better score, simply because I felt more comfortable typing in my answers into the computer rather than writing them on paper. But again, that was just my feeling, and feelings are not facts, if you agree. So let's look at the facts and see where I actually got a higher score and where I got a lower score. So let's look at the listening part. So when I took the paper-based test, I got an 8.5. But when I took the computer-based test 2 years after the first test, I only got an 8.0. I had the feeling that I captured everything correctly, but then there were 1 or 2 questions during which I blanked out for just a second or two. I think it was a number or so that I had to fill in, and I just didn't catch it. I just didn't get it, and so I input the wrong answer to that. So that might be the reason. Let's go on to the reading part. So for the paper-based test, I got a 9.0, whereas for the computer-based test, my score decreased to 8.0, 1 full point. And I was wondering, why is that the case? I don't think that my reading skills declined during these 2 years in Canada. And again, I think that it turned out that I was more comfortable reading on paper. I could absorb more. That could be one reason, but the other reason could also be that during the paper-based test, the text would be on these sheets of paper, right? So I would be reading through it, and while reading through it, I would like make my marks, underline, make notes, etc. And somehow that helped me to absorb the text, the content of the text. Whereas during the computer-based test, there are actually also very good tools. You can highlight the text like using a digital highlighter, and you can also type in your notes. But I didn't really make use of it that much. I just didn't feel that comfortable using it. I did use the highlighter, but I didn't make use of the notes, and I didn't like scribble as much. Although actually you are going to be given a sheet of paper where you can make some drafts, you can scribble notes, etc. But just because it was a computer-based test, I didn't make use of all those additional tools, and somehow it might be the reason why that then resulted in a lower score for the reading part. Anyways, let's go on. So let's go to writing. So in the paper-based test, I got a 7.5, and in the computer-based test, I got a slight increase to 8.0. And here, again, there might be two reasons. The first reason could be because I've been in Canada for a while, and I've also started a blog, which is multiplecareers.com, about a year plus ago. So I've been doing a bit more writing, and so perhaps my writing skills improved a bit. But I think that the other stronger reason is because I really felt more comfortable typing. I can type much faster than I can handwrite, and I've lately, maybe it's the same for you guys, I've not been handwriting a lot. I've been mostly using my laptop, typing into my phone, etc. So it was just more efficient and effective to just type my essay into the computer, and it was also much easier to make changes, to shift things around, to delete things. And so whereas if you do the paper-based test, it's really a hassle to having to erase some parts, rewriting it, and so on. I think you know what I mean. So I think that was quite obvious here, and yeah, that resulted in a slight increase in score. So now let's look at the speaking part. During the paper-based test, I got an 8.0, and in the computer-based test, I got a 9.0. And I must tell you here that there's absolutely no difference in terms of method used if you take the paper-based or the computer-based test, because the person interviewing you, asking you the questions, testing you during the speaking test is a regular person. It has nothing to do with whether it's paper-based or computer-based. So I think it depends more on the person who is asking you and how you maybe feel during that interview or situation, whether you feel comfortable or not, and perhaps even what question you are asked, what question you happen to get asked at that point in time, and whether or not you feel like you have an answer handy, whether you can answer the question well or not. And I think the reason why I got a higher score in the computer-based test, which I took in Canada, was because I just happened to get someone interviewing me who I really felt comfortable with. The person was very conversational, open and friendly with me, and somehow it affected me. It affected the way I responded to her question, and I also felt much more confident when replying. But yeah, that's only one factor, of course. That's only one factor, and it might be significant or not depending on your personality. The other thing was also because I've been in Canada for 2 years. I've spoken more English during this time, obviously, so I just felt more comfortable speaking. But another thing was also, before I started the speaking test, I consciously told myself that I'm going to try to expand as much as possible on my answers. So if, for example, I get a question about where I live, I wouldn't just answer I wouldn't just give a short answer and say I live at da da da, but I would like expand further that I live at this and this place, and this is how it looks like, this is what I like about it, etc. Because I don't know how they judge the answers and how they score them, but I think it would make sense to say that you would get a better score if you are able to expand more on your questions rather than just giving a really short answer, because in the end what they want to know is how or to what level you are able to converse in daily situations in English. So after taking both the paper-based test and the computer-based test and having like exactly the same score, what would I choose if I ever had to take the IELTS test again? I think that I would still go for the computer-based test because overall I had a much better experience with it, especially with the writing part. If you want to know in more detail about it, then don't forget to check out my video, which you can see on one of these cards here. I hope this video was useful to you. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll talk to you again next time.